Welcome to the T2 Hubcast. Join Martin, Dave, Spencer and guests as they discuss all things personal and professional development. The T2 Hubcast, brought to you by the People Performance People.
So welcome to the T2 Hubcast with me, Martin Johnson.
And me, Lydia English.
Lydia.
Hiya.
How are you doing?
All right.
Are you nervous?
Yeah, I'm bricking it.
So, welcome back to the T2 Hubcast. I'm really excited. Lydia clearly isn't, but usually it's me, Dave, Spencer, who are doing these podcasts. Lydia, I'll probably ask you to just give us a bit of your background in a second, but Lydia is our budding, developing occupational psychologist here at T2. And she really is the brain behind the operation in terms of the content we create, the research. She's the head of research here. She sits in the office, she steers the ship, she tells us what we're doing, where we're going wrong, what we need to correct and what we do. And I've been trying to get Lydia on a podcast, I kid you not, for the best part of 2 years.
Yeah.
Is it? That's right.
Yeah.
Lydia doesn't like the limelight. She doesn't like being like, she likes doing her thing and then we do our thing. But I really wanted to get her on here and discuss something around psychology that I think will be fascinating. So, Lydia, thank you for pushing yourself.
You're welcome.
But she is bricking it, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm bricking it.
But you'll be absolutely fine. I'll guide us through it. So, Lydia, just I alluded to what you do here at T2, but just give us a quick 20, 30 second on your education, your background, what you did before T2 and where you found yourself now.
Yeah, so I've done an undergrad in psychology and then I went on to do a master's in occupational psychology. Prior to working at T2, I did 5 years working in HR, but then, eventually got into T2 after lots of stalking Martin and finally got a job and I'm able to kind of utilise what I've been doing in my degrees and my studies. So I love it. Awesome.
And she did stalk me as well. She emailed me at least once every 6 months for 2 years saying, can I come and work for T2? Yeah, absolutely you can. So you have, I'm not just blowing your trumpet, Lydia. You've been amazing since you got here. Huge impact on the direction we're going, the T2 hub, the content, the research we do, the emergence of some of our new experiences and content. And I just think it's a shame to lock you away. It's like lock you away in the tower without, revealing you to the world. So thank you for coming on this. Now, one of the things me and Lydia are going to discuss, which, I'm excited about getting somebody who studied in occupational psychology in because you understand what it is that I like to talk about. And I always describe me and Lydia as Lennon and McCartney. I come in and drop loads of bombs and say, what about this? And then Lydia makes sure that I'm correct factually, which is a really good combo, right?
Yeah.
But I wanted to discuss psychology in general and almost go back to the birth of psychology and then how it's evolved over the years into some of the methods that we know of today with psychometric testing and the different models, etc.
Yeah.
And then talk about the acronym OCEAN, which in simple terms is the 5 big sort of facets, indicators of personality styles.
Yeah, the big 5.
The big 5, as it's called. But before that, let's go right back to the beginning. Am I right in saying, Lydia, so this is great because we can do live fact checking. Am I right in saying that almost the godfather, the originator of psychology was Freud?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, like personality theories and stuff like that dates back to, the ancient Greek kind of
the
times.
Philosophers and Socrates and
Aristotle and people like that who defined between the mind and the soul and the fact that the brain was different from our personalities and how we present ourselves.
Yeah, so that stems back hundreds of thousands of years.
Yeah.
But in terms of the sort of the more modern turn of events in psychology where we really started to unpick humans and put a bit more evidence behind it, would you say Freud? I know he was a theorist, but was he probably the early
adopter he was probably the most monumental in the start of theories surrounding personality. I know there's a lot of people who don't necessarily agree with Freud's theories, but he's kind of managed to stay there in...
Well, a lot of it back then was guesswork for Freud and observational theories. Some of that stuff, like you say, has been debunked through neuroscience and modern day science.
Yeah.
But some of his stuff actually started to, I think the beauty of Freud was that even where he was wrong, he was in the right areas.
Yeah.
So he was starting to ask questions about things that, and he came up with his own theories that even though it was proven wrong, it sort of led a series of scientific studies to then find out the right answer.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So I think that's why he's probably still very, very well thought of and known today.
Yeah, definitely.
So then post-Freud came a bit of an era where there was a bit more theory, sort of theoretical thinking going on. And before it led sort of post-1940s where we started to get some science behind psychology and some evidence. But I think between the post-1940s and Freud was probably Carl Jung, would you say?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so he was the guy, he came up with his own kind of theories, which even though he worked under Freud, his theories kind of conflicted what Freud said, but kind of the most noticeable thing he came up with was the introversion-extroversion personality theory.
So introversion-extroversion concept was Carl Jung?
Yeah.
Yeah, which is, as we're going to go on to, is a key part of formed modern personality styles and neuroscience around behaviors, in terms of introversion-extroversion. So Carl Jung is a name which is often quoted, and again, another step on that journey of really starting to explore human psychology and what makes us tick.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Then go back to, or sort of fast forward to sort of post-war, really, 1940s onwards. We then saw a real fast track in the emergence of psychology and evidence and data and neuroscience. And then, if anything, Lyd, it went from, a few classic philosophers and theorists to the world was littered with models and theories and science overnight.
Yeah.
But for me, no matter what model came up or, what it was was underpinned by the same sort of big five thing. So just talk about the big five. When did that first come into play where someone said every human being can be categorized in different ways by 5 main traits, personality traits? When did this come in?
Well, so just before kind of the big five was established, a psychologist called Raymond Cattell came up with 16 factors of personality. And then from there, lots of other psychologists jumped on board and actually thought 16 factors maybe a bit too many to kind of define personality, so simplified it into the 5 different ones. Now, there was like a lot of development along the way. With Lewis Goldberg, I think he was the first person to whittle it down to 5. And then, but more noticeably, it was Costa and McRae who made kind of the Big 5 model and the OCEAN acronym.
Awesome. And I like that because, like you say, using, and through all our studies here at T2, even to the modern day, I use OCEAN and I use the Big 5 because any psychometric testing you will do, insights, Myers-Briggs, social styles, SDIs, print profiling, whatever it is fun. The algorithms are fundamentally set based on testing on the Big 5.
Yeah, pretty much.
So at this point then, let's talk about the Big 5. It's the acronym OCEAN. And if you're listening to this, we're going to try and simplify this because if you've ever wondered what makes you tick or what completes your DNA, whether it's nature or nurture or a mixture of the two, modern day science says it's probably half and half, 60-40 nature versus nurture. But what happens is you develop your persona, your view of the world, your behaviors, your personality style based on these 5 things and where on the scale you are on these 5 things. Yeah. And the acronym is OCEAN. So let's start with the O of OCEAN. What is that, Lyd?
So the O is openness to experience. So basically that's kind of a person's willingness to try new things. It's also like their ability to be vulnerable and their kind of capability to come up with new ideas, think outside of the box.
Love that. Openness to experience is the first one that, the first big facet that makes up our personality. So some people are very open to experience, new experiences. In fact, they fundamentally depend on it, me being one of them.
Yeah, I'm not one of them.
Lydia is actually probably, you're not quite on the opposite end of the scale, but you're definitely on the other side of the fence, which says, I like certain levels of comfort. I like a little bit of knowing what I know. I'll push myself every now and then as long as I can retract to my safe space.
Yeah.
So if me and you was on our level of openness to new experiences, I'd probably be on the higher end of the scale. You'd be probably just left of centre, would you say?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah.
You could probably step into it, but not as open as I am.
Yeah, I like my routine.
Yeah, routine. I like what I know, and too much change and chaos and new stuff and meeting new people and hugs. We have this ongoing joke here.
Like hugs.
If Lydia meets someone for the first time and they're going for a hug, it's like fend to the face.
I'm really not a hugger.
Step away from me, right? Whereas I'll just kiss and hug everybody because I'm open to new experiences. So the O in ocean is openness to new experiences, and every human being will be on a sliding scale from extremely not open at all.
Yeah.
And I like my routine and I like what I know and I like staying in, to love traveling, love meeting new people, love new experiences, love moving around, to anywhere in between. Because the thing about psychology, ladies, everything is a sliding scale. You are not one or the other. You're just somewhere on that spectrum.
Yep, you fall somewhere on the line.
Cool. So first indicator of anybody's personality style is openness to experience. Now, if you listen to this, out of 1 to 5 right now, just in your head, score yourself 1 to 5. 5 being I am incredibly open. 1, I am incredibly closed. 3, sometimes, but I'll sit in the middle, and 2 and 4 either side. Make that mental note or a physical note of that now. I'd score myself a 5, Lyd. What would you be?
Probably about a 2 or a 3.
2/3, depending on the day.
half.
Yeah, 2.5. All right. Cool. Okay, so let's move on to the C. What is the second of the big 5 factors that make up our personality style?
So C is conscientiousness. So it's a person's ability to control impulses and act in socially acceptable ways.
So as well, control impulses and act in socially acceptable ways. It's also then links. Let me link it to something else as well. That means that it's a person who has a sense of right and wrong, rules and structure and governance and order.
Yeah.
It also then means if you're conscientious, you have an attention to detail and doing things properly.
Yeah.
So it leads you to be organized, diligent, planned, prepared, but it also leads you to do the right thing.
Well,
if the rules are the rules, you stick to them, right?
Yeah.
If there's so very orderly, unchaotic people who believe in doing the right thing, and the most socially acceptable thing, right?
Yeah.
How conscientious are you? Now, I struggle with this one, Lyd, because in some ways I'm very conscientious.
Yes.
As you know, but in many others, I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for me, my level of conscientiousness is a conscious decision. I have to focus on being it.
Yes.
It's not ingrained in me, but in certain things, I have to make sure that I do. Generally, I do the right thing. I stick to the rules. I don't break the law already. But in minor things, I don't mind breaking the rules and going sideways and underneath and taking a few risks. So I think on the spectrum with this one, I'd be middle ground, probably a 3.
Yeah.
Because it depends on the situation.
Yeah.
What do you think you are?
I think I'm probably quite high on it. I think things through.
I think you are. I think you have a good soul, and I think you believe in doing the right thing.
Yeah.
You're incredibly loyal. You'll see things through, and you are very organized and stuff. And thing about you is if something's dumped on you, you will make sure you understand it, then you'll write it down, and then you'll make sure that you deliver it in a timely fashion. And for me, that's conscientiousness.
Yeah. Because
it matters to you. So I think you're high on it. So if the O is openness to new experiences, the second indicator that forms our personality style is how conscientious you are. And that can be very conscientious or not at all and unruly and, just winging it type thing,
off the bat.
Absolutely. Okay. E, what's the E of ocean?
So E is probably, we'll all be familiar with it. We've already mentioned it. So it's extroversion.
Versus introversion. So they use extroversion because that's how, how extroverted are you versus introverted. And again, if introverted was on the left and extroverted was right, there'd be a sliding scale in the middle ground. You can straddle the two. You can be sort of semi-introverted, but can step into extroversion or vice versa. No surprise. I'm a 5 on this.
Yes.
Complete introvert. Complete extrovert. Very extroverted. I gain my stimulus and my energy from being at work, being with other people, having connections, being out there. In fact, my anxiety-inducing time is being alone.
Yeah.
Is being at home. Not that alone, that's the wrong way, because I do like my isolation time, but just having nothing to do.
Well, yeah.
Just being
Yeah, you
bored.
like to be busy, don't you?
Yeah. So I'd say I am definitely more extroverted, whereas the introverted people get their stimulus and recharge their batteries from being alone.
Yeah.
Thinking time, you know, they don't need people. They don't, sometimes, in fact, too many people, the thought of someone coming round is like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's a bit of a chore.
Yeah, just want to be on my own.
Yeah.
So introverted people need to recharge their batteries in isolation and alone, and they can step out into the world, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
You know, but they do need to retract. And I guess this goes hand in hand with openness to new experience as well. I think the more introverted you are, the less open you are. The more extroverted, the likely more open you are.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
Do you say you're more introverted?
Oh, definitely, yeah. I think I'm maybe, again, a 2 or a 3 on the scale. I do enjoy my own company. I don't mind spending time on my own, but too much time on my own doesn't do me any favours. But probably after a couple of vodkas, I'm maybe a 4 on the scale.
Well, this is what I was going to say about you. When you so I think you're introverted, more introverted than extroverted. But once you build trust and rapport with people, you easily become a 4.
Yeah.
Because actually, you're a good laugh. When you don't take yourself too seriously, you engage in the banter. When we go out, you have a great time.
Yeah.
Now, if you did that every night, it'd become too much for you.
I'd be exhausted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I definitely think you're more introverted, but you definitely can step with the right company into that extroversion sort of state.
Yeah.
Definitely. Okay. So with the 3 of the big 5 is openness to new experiences, how conscientious you are, and how introverted versus extroverted you are. So what's the A?
So A is agreeableness. So that's basically how well someone gets on with other people.
How agreeable or disagreeable generally you are. And I love this one because when we talk to people about it in sessions, Lyd, they hate the fact that they'll say, well, you're just calling me disagreeable. I'm not disagreeable all the time.
Yeah.
Or I'm not agreeable all the time. I'm not weak. But what it's saying in general in psychology is, as a predisposed position, you will be generally more agreeable or disagreeable most of the time.
Yes.
Now, for example, I probably would be more disagreeable than agreeable in the fact that I'm not doing it for the sake of it, but I have a strong personality and I have my own mind and my own views. So by the nature of that, in general, I am more likely to engage in conversations where I have an opinion and therefore would potentially disagree than agree.
Yeah.
Whereas more amiable, peace and harmony, passive people, even if they do disagree, are more likely to agree because it's the path of least resistance and it will avoid conflict.
Yes.
So you're more agreeable.
Definitely.
See? Right? You're more agreeable in general. I'm more disagreeable in general. But this is the most important point, Lyd. If you feel passionately and strongly about something, you will speak up.
Yes.
And I've seen that. You do it with me. I'm your boss and you do it with me loads of times. And I really appreciate it because when you do it, it has power.
Yeah.
Because you don't do it all the time. When you do it, it makes me listen. I go, oh, she must have a point or feel very strongly about this.
Yeah.
Just as much as when I sit down, calm my chimp and listen to somebody else and come around to their way of thinking, it adds more power.
Yes.
Because that takes a lot of energy for me. Right? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I like this part of Ocean. I like this as being one of the big 4. Whether you like it or not, and again, you can be scoring yourself out of 5 on all of these 5, but if you're honest with yourself, you will be more disagreeable or agreeable in general in life.
Yeah.
And that's okay. What's his name? Jordan Peterson has done lots of work on this. He believes in the big 5 in Ocean, and he's a clinical psychologist and very well known. And he says that the studies show that disagreeable people rise to the top of organizations more than agreeable people.
Yeah.
He also states that in the data and the research, more men are more disagreeable than women.
That makes sense.
In general, because of the maternal instinct and evolution and biology.
Yeah.
So he's saying the big equality argument is evolution. If more men are disagreeable than women in general, and disagreeableness is one of the key factors in rising up in organizations, whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
That's why you get alpha males at the top of organizations.
Yeah.
Whether that's right or not is different, Lyd, but we're talking about psychology and biology, aren't we?
It makes sense, doesn't it?
Cool. So the last one of Ocean, Lyd, the N.
The N.
What does the N stand
So
for? Because I
that's-
can't hardly say this, so you better say
Oh,
it.
I don't know if I can say it either. It's neuroticism.
Yes, neuroticism. Now, that actually can be mistaken with eroticism. So, let's define what we mean. What is to be neurotic or neuroticism? What is that?
So basically, it's anxiousness.
Yeah.
Whether, so it can be thought of as a negative trait. However, it's measured by your level of self-confidence, really, and your self-esteem.
So just to clarify that, Lyd, is it safe to say that a person's why this is one of the big 5 indicators of personality style is because neuroticism is your susceptibility to anxiety.
Yeah.
And me and you did a fascinating piece recently about your biochemistry.
Yeah.
Many people think anxiety is solely brought on by nurture and experiences in life.
Mm-hmm.
That creates anchors, and therefore you become very anxious. So if you've been in a car crash, or you've lost a parent, or you've had a rough childhood, then it creates a level of anxiety in a person. What we actually know from neuroscience and data is that it's more likely to be hereditary.
Yeah.
You inherit a biochemistry that will either make you more neurotic or not, more anxious, more susceptible to the chemicals that cause it than not. So if you've got anxious parents or depressed parents, you're far more likely to maybe carry that genetic code yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
So, but what we're getting back to the point, a person's level of anxiousness forms their personality style.
Yeah.
Because if you're an anxious person, it's going to affect the other 4.
Yeah.
It's going to affect your ability to be open, to be more extroverted. It's going to maybe send your conscientiousness into overdrive, which is counterproductive. If you've got low levels of neuroticism, so you're blessed, you've won the biochemistry lottery and you're blessed with happiness, then it's going to enable the other 4.
Yeah.
Be more open, take more risks, have more experiences, be more extroverted.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Don't take yourself too seriously on conscientiousness at times.
Yeah.
Take a risk, all that type of stuff. So I don't know if you would agree, Lyd, but I'm going to ask you your honest opinion on this. I think this is possibly the most important factor of the 5 in terms of how it governs the way you are.
Yeah, exactly. But also as well, just kind of going back to the extroversion-introversion scale, people often think being introverted means that you are anxious, but that's not necessarily the case. We kind of developed a theory here at T2, which kind of said that just because you're an extrovert doesn't mean you're confident. It can also mean that you're anxious. And the extroverted part of you is the fact that you want to be around people to get your energy. So if they was to be left on their own, they would really struggle. Vice versa with the, with the confident introvert. So I would say I'm probably a confident introvert.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
I do like spending time on my own, but I'm actually comfortable in myself, in my own skin. And, I can socialize with people when I need to.
Yeah. So that's a great point, that, Lyd. And it's one of the most favorite, probably my favorite piece of work we've done.
Yeah.
Because the biggest misconception is that introverts are shy and anxious and extroverts are confident. And it's not the case. Introversion, extroversion, as we explained, is simply where you get your stimulus and recharge.
Yeah.
Whether that's in social, loud gatherings and engaging other human beings, or whether that's in isolation and being alone.
Yeah.
Now, both of them can either be confident or anxious. You
Yeah.
can be an anxious extrovert and you can be a confident introvert. So neuroticism, your level of neuroticism will govern whether you are anxious or confident, not your introversion, extroversion.
Yes.
Love that. And that's why this OCEAN acronym is really important, because the big 5 are intrinsically linked.
Yes.
And if you went down them now and scored on a piece of paper 1 to 5, you'll see your dynamic, your DNA. So if we just do this quickly now as a very quick exercise on each other, I would go, openness for me is a 5.
Mm-hmm.
I would say conscientiousness is a 3.
Yeah.
I would say extroversion is a 5. I would go agreeableness is a 2. I'm probably more disagreeable than agreeable.
Yeah.
So I'll go 2. And then I would go neuroticism 1.
You're probably a 0.
Yeah, I'm really not an anxious person, really, and for the good and the bad. But so when you look at that, that's telling me that I'm incredibly open. I love experiences. I take risks. I find new things to do, and and push myself to grow. I can be conscientious when I need to be, but I like to be free spirited and wing it as well at times.
Yeah.
Very extroverted, so love being around people and being in relationships. Not very agreeable at times, but it almost then starts to sort of be a strength of mine when it serves me well, but can then make me not very nice to be around when I'm not being overly agreeable. And low levels of anxiety means that it fuels the rest of it. Because I don't have high neuroticism, then I am comfortable disagreeing. I am comfortable putting myself out there, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So I get my DNA. What I also get is where that's not going to serve me well. Certainly on the agreeableness side, and sometimes on when I have to be a bit more conscientious.
Yeah.
That where I might be going down a path where it's going to get me in trouble. That's really interesting because I get it. I get what fuels me, and I get my makeup, right?
Yeah.
Well, how would you score yourself on that?
So, openness to experience, I'd probably say 2. I said 2.5, didn't I? Between 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Conscientiousness, I'm probably about a 4 on there, I'd say.
Yeah, I'd say you're a minimum of a 4, and sometimes in the right areas you could probably be a 5.
Yeah. Extroversion, so I'm more again between a 2 and a 3.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Agreeableness, I'm quite high on that. I reckon I'd probably go for a 5.
I think you are. I think you're a 5, and so keep going, and then we'll come back to that.
Yeah, and then my neuroticism, again, I'm not really an anxious person as much as I'm agreeable and don't necessarily speak up all the time. I wouldn't say I'm anxious. I'm confident in who I am, but sometimes I just don't feel the need to.
Yeah, I think you'd be a 3/4.
Yeah,
you can easily be a 4 on that. Sorry, it'd be low, wouldn't it? So you'd be a 2/3. So I think you can easily be a 2, low level. But there'll be times where you withdraw within yourself if you're challenged or compromised, where it could go to a 3. But you're not. You're quite balanced. You're very, very balanced, and I think that'd be so slightly like if we had like a sliding scale, it'd be like the opposites in a way.
Yeah.
And that's why me and you work very well together. I think with the understanding, because I need you, you need me.
Yeah.
I'm thrusting us forward and taking the risks and all the rest of it, and you're like mopping up behind me and making sure we do it properly, and that actually we get it right. I call us Lennon and McCartney. So I think it works like that. But for you, it's about understanding that that's okay, because that is you, and you don't need to be a Martin Johnson.
Yeah.
And coming on this podcast and being nervous is a sign of your skill.
Mm-hmm.
I come on this excited as a sign of mine.
Yeah.
And that's the difference, right? If I had to do a 10,000 word essay, I'd be absolutely melting by now, and you'd be fine. You'd sit in the pocket and do it. So we all have our strengths. And I think listening to this podcast, do the OCEAN acronym, write it down, score yourself 1 to 5, and just have a look. What is it telling you? Where does that serve you really well, and bloody embrace it? And where could it catch you out? And where do you need to push yourself a little bit? Like you pushed yourself today on this podcast, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the art of it, isn't it? It's embracing your authentic self, knowing how your psychology is made up through the big 5, knowing roughly what skill you have. And instead of trying to be something you're not,
just accept it.
Just accept it and make it work for you.
Yeah.
Lydia, with a minute left, because I've loved this and I could talk to you all day. Any final comments on this? I mean, if you're listening to this and people are going, that's really interesting, but what the hell do I do with it? I don't think we're asking people to do a lot with it, are we?
No. I think probably the most important thing is so obviously accepting that's where you lie on the scale, but also bearing in mind other people sit on different areas of the scale, and you have to accept that you can be flawed in certain areas, and other people are completely different to you, and you just have to bear that in mind.
Yeah, it's okay. And half of it, you are blessed with your biochemistry or not.
Yeah,
So you're
don't have
fighting
a
a losing
choice.
battle trying to completely transform it, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Lydia English, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Did you enjoy that?
Kind of.
Will you come back again?
Maybe.
I hope you do, because fascinating stuff, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we'll be back shortly with another T2 Hubcast.